welcome back to another episode of Cyber Go-to-Market Go Talk, the go-to podcast for females in cyber. As a reminder, my name is Elle and I work at Stanton House, and I essentially help pre-IPO cybersecurity vendors scale their go-to-market teams across sales, marketing and customer success. And we are obviously on season 2 of Cyber Go-to-Market Girl Talk off the back of a very successful first season. But this season we're delving deeper into the numbers, whereby less than 1% of founders or CEOs are actually female within the cybersecurity space. So I am very, very excited to be joined by Marina Segal, the co-founder and CEO of Tamnoon, an early stage cybersecurity vendor who are a leader in the first hybrid human AI managed cloud security remediation space. And obviously it's a very exciting time to be talking to you guys, as you've just come off the back of a very successful Series A fundraise. So congratulations and welcome to the episode.
Thank you, Al, and thank you for doing that and hosting me today.
Yeah, no, it's my absolute pleasure. So, I guess firstly, it would be great just to have a little bit of an introduction in your own words. Tell us about Tamnoon.
Of course. Tamnoon is a managed service for cloud security remediation, and we are the vendor who is taking off the plates of cloud security people. We are not adding them yet another product. They overwhelm. They have a lot of dashboards. They have a lot of alerts. What we are doing, we're providing a scalable, safe remediation for anything that relates to their cloud exposure management program.
Amazing. Nice. And you've got a very interesting, I guess, background prior to actually founding Tamnoon. So I know that you've done bits around consulting and product management. You led Sysdig as well in the cloud security space. And notoriously, those types of roles are kind of quote unquote held by men, certainly within our sector. So tell us a little bit about your kind of background there and how you made your way to where you are today.
I never thought about, being a woman among, other men. I was always thinking about what excites me, what I'm passionate about, and how can I, get to the places where I feel the most excited. So I guess part of who I am is constantly getting out of the comfort zone. That's what makes me move forward. And throughout my career journey, which was not planned at all, I was always going to the places that I felt most challenged and most excited about. And it always was connected to technology, to how people use technology. And over time, I just naturally got into security space that I was fascinated about even more. And it just happened for me to be a female among, very male dominated industry, but I never felt that it's something that I need to overcome. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting then. So you've had a very positive experience, and to be clear, most people have, right? This is definitely not a platform to I guess, degrade or bash men in any way whatsoever, but it's just more about highlighting the fact that females are an underrepresented minority in the space that we work in. But it sounds like what I'm hearing is that it's not necessarily something that you viewed as a hurdle that you had to kind of overcome. You just were, it is what it is, this is my job, regardless of my gender, I'm doing it.
Obviously, there are situations when you find yourself, feeling that you need to prove more, you need to kind of get proof points before getting credibility. That's all there. Yeah, and I think in the beginning of the career, obviously it's much harder than when you already, shown success, when people know who you are. And obviously there were situations where I was the only female in the room. I needed work harder to prove myself, to make people listen to me. But I think it was also something that helped me to understand that I just need to support more those other ladies who are in the beginning of their careers, to get their voices heard. And um, as a leader in security, I think we just need a little bit of awareness on both sides on how hard it is to make the first steps. I think it's much easier over time. You can be more playful around it. You can even joke about it in the not being, put down because of the fact that you just happen to be a female in the cyber. And I think we are getting better over time. I do see more and more female in those conferences. So I'm optimistic that shift is happening, and we are kind of facilitating it. And then here we are in the podcast that it's only talking about this topic. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's a few key things that you've mentioned there, and certainly I've even noticed that when you go to conferences like RSA and Black Hat, yes, whilst most of the majority of the people there are male, I'm really enjoying seeing a lot more female presence in those conferences. And then another thing that you mentioned, of course, is that it is, I guess, probably as you become more evolved in your career, you start to find your own confidence, find your feet a little bit, and find what your strengths are, your superpowers. It does become easier. And I think that's probably, whether you're a male or a female, right? Anyone who's earlier on in their career, there's always a sentiment around having to prove yourself a little bit more, but maybe more so, especially as a female in our space anyway. So that makes sense. I guess for anyone that is listening where they are earlier on in their career and they'll see females like you who have got to a place where, you founded your own company, you're a CEO, and you have seen some of that success, do you have any advice that you might share with them on how to kind of overcome any obstacles?
I'm a big believer in energy that brings the momentum. I think it's about persistence more than anything else. Being able to fail and keep going, and being able to hear no 2,000 times and still be optimistic that you can continue, and there will be the yes that you're waiting for. Um, Maybe being flexible about the next steps. Because, sometimes we drive on the highway, and there is a roadblock, right? So we always will find a way to get home, changing the route. So just keep going, and you would be amazed how life can be surprisingly negative, but also a lot of positive comes out of those negative situations. You just need to change the direction a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's probably fair to say that a certain characteristic, and this word is utilized so much in so many different contexts, but being resilient, right? My boss always shares the advice with me that any obstacle that comes up, I need to view it as almost like a puzzle, and you've just simply got to move the next piece in the puzzle. And I'm sure just because you're a CEO and a co-founder, those things don't suddenly just stop and go away, but you've got more experience in dealing with them.
Quite the opposite.
Um, so I'm curious a little bit about, I guess, mentorship and your thoughts on what part that might play, especially for aspiring females. And I guess, firstly, do you have mentors then that you've relied upon throughout your career?
The definition of mentor is interesting. A lot of my inspiration or learnings come from good friends, my grandma, my mother, my colleagues that, not necessarily were defined as mentors. There's so many things that we can learn from each person, even from people who are on our team, not necessarily, our managers or above. And I never had someone who was, you're my mentor, that's your job, and I'm gonna speak with you twice a week for a mentorship session. I don't believe that the synthetic way of defining it can work. I've had an enormous amount of people who changed the way I think about some things, who provided me super valuable advice in very tough situations. And I never shied away from just reaching out and asking for help. And I think that's the mentorship for me. There are a lot of people who helped me throughout the way. A lot of them were people who I reported to. A lot of them were um, leaders who became, in the end of the day, our angels.
Yeah. So essentially, it's just it's organic conversations between people who care about one another, and that doesn't have to be someone that's got more experience than you. It can actually sometimes be people that maybe are earlier on in their career as well, that give you a different perspective to think about.
Yeah, and what I find lately is that being a founder is a very lonely journey, and actually getting advice from people outside of the professional network. My friends who are talking to me about work-life balance and how they're managing it without being an entrepreneurs, and what they are doing to make their kids happy, make their family stable. Over time you understand that mentorship, it's not only about how do you make it to the up to the career ladder. It's a lot about balance in your professional and personal life, and over time, and the more you work, the more advice you need actually for the other part of your life. So I strongly recommend stop looking for specific mentor. Get inspired by people who you really feel, that gut feeling that you really want to be around that person, that you appreciate their perspective, and they make you curious. And those are the people that I always tend to kind of naturally to be connected to.
Yeah. I think there are some really great people that people have in their lives that do so much more than they even realize.
And thank them for an advice that they're giving you. We all want to be appreciated, and someone is making you more successful, if someone made your life a little bit easier, just tell them that they did.
Yeah. Yeah. So your co-founder then, Idan, I believe his name is. So he's obviously he's male. So you've got male and female here that are leading the charge at Noon. So tell us a little bit about what the dynamic is like as you two grow the business.
It's interesting because Idan, he is actually one of those leaders whose goal in this world is to promote females in cyber. He has three daughters, and he is a strong believer in diversity, in hiring the right people, but actually making emphasis on giving more opportunities to females in the industry. And I learned a ton from him, how to structure and how to identify those opportunities and promote female in the cyber. So our dynamics is really interesting, because a lot of times he's teaching me what I supposed to be teaching as a female in the industry, but a lot of those skills around team building and how to empower female in the workspace, and is actually something that he is excelling in.
That's really pleasing to hear. And I have to say that anytime I'm recruiting and working with a male hiring manager, I'm hearing the same sentiment about wanting to ensure that the opportunity is as available as possible to anyone from all diverse backgrounds, and that being something that they believe is really important, um, not just for the sake of it, but genuinely for the growth and the success of the team. So, pivoting slightly here, but you've just come off the back of a great fundraise. So, how do you guys go about, I guess, making the assessment of who are the right type of investors that you want to be working with, and ensuring that they are values aligned with you in the business?
First of all, you need to mention that investor in a really tough situation in the board meeting, and think about, do you really want that investor to be in the room with you in the super challenging places that you may end up being? Um, So it's really important to have the right person on the other side who is joining your board. It's almost like you're forming a family there, and you need to make sure that you can trust those people. Obviously, there are all the the things that you would want investors to help you with: introductions to customers and to the network, and then help in um, maybe decision making around certain areas, knowledge in the domain that you are operating in. All of those things are super important. And as you evaluate your potential investors, it's also important how much decisions they would want to make, almost want to kind of dictate. And if it feels not aligned with what your expectations are, this is definitely a red flag. So those were the kind of the three main areas that we thought about when we were talking to investors while fundraising.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like that aside from the obvious, which is the support from a financial perspective, and kind of the strategics of driving the business forward, but it's more so about that connection with the people that are in the room, and that probably being one of, if not the most important thing.
Absolutely. And we were in situations where we actually said no to the partners that we just decided that the way that the process was treated
Mm,
gave us a huge red flag. And it was a very straightforward no for us.
makes sense. I guess as you've gone through this, not just the journey with Hamnoon, but just generally speaking throughout your career, have there been things that you've uncovered and learned about yourself on this journey to where you are today?
Oh, wow. It's a continuous kind of a process for me. You figure where your weaknesses are, and you kind of can actually see how over time you become more and more aware to yourself, and make those kind of almost cautious choices not to do something intuitive. So I think what I learned the most is that self-awareness, about different places where I know that I'm not good at. You would be amazed how much they change over time. Um, like things that I learned about myself 10 years ago, and a year ago are in totally different places. And I think it's that maturity of the journey. And I'm sure that I have tons in front of me to work on still.
Yeah. I think there is so much power in self awareness. I'm sure helps you grow all the time.
Yeah. And I just noticed that when you are super tired or exhausted, that self awareness just goes down to zero and you go back to reality, right?
Oh yeah, literally, I can completely empathise. So I clocked earlier, obviously, and you were. It was quite cute. You had a little "I love you" on your board, which you just wiped away for obviously the podcast. So you've got a daughter who wrote that. So I'm curious. Obviously, being in the place that you are now, are there things that you either sort of teach your daughter or expose her to ensure that she feels as supported as possible to, take the direction that she would want to go to? Because I think, and the reason why I'm saying this is that it's not necessarily so readily available from a younger age about, females can go and study science, or they can study mathematics or engineering or something. So I was just curious to hear your thoughts on that for any of the other mums that might be listening out there.
So the way I approach motherhood is more about just letting her choose, and it's it's about everything. It's about, the activities, the clothes. Like the moment she was able to put her pants on herself, she was picking up her clothes. I didn't have time to be there, frankly speaking, and that made her be more independent and made her own choices really early. She's 8 now, and I think she's much more mature that most people in our family. She's a very artistic person, totally opposite than me. She's she loves Barbies, and I was more of a tomboy. Um, but on the other hand, she's really tough. Like she's doing competitive gymnastics, and she's like really pushing through. Um, and I think when the way I kind of emphasize the fact that she needs to be persistent, and she needs to make her own choices is just by giving her super positive feedback when I see that she's working really hard, and giving her reward, just like take care of yourself, and be nice to yourself.
It sounds like you've got some great things in there that I'm sure she, feeds off and learns from, and that's going to really help her continue to be a powerhouse as she grows up. So I remember the very first time I met you, you had briefly spoken about a meetup group that you'd created. I think it was called Security Diva Meetup Group. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, because it may well inspire others to maybe even do their own groups. And
Gosh, I miss those days when we were very active. Right now, it's kind of after COVID, and me moving away from the area. It's kind of not really active. So if anyone listening and wants to pick up the initiative, that would be definitely amazing. The idea behind that is when I was still too challenged with public speaking myself. In the beginning of my career, I wasn't doing a lot of public speaking. Obviously, I was doing tons of presentations, but it was always in work situation. It was not in front of like big audiences. So we saw that, if you want to get over some fear, or stop being challenged in some area, you just need to practice, right? So how would you practice public speaking if you are afraid of, big crowds? And so we saw that organizing that meetup group of cyber security professionals, female. We had a lot of men joining us along the way. We were not kind of really locked on the idea that it's supposed to be only female, but um, we were just bringing speakers who were, some of them were new to the public speaking domains, and it was a pretty big success. We were sponsored by Facebook and Google, and then we had an amazing, really senior speakers in the industry, as well as really junior speakers talking one after another um, about topics that they were passionate about. And that was a very cozy, nice group to begin your journey in the public speaking. And
I love it. I think that that's awesome. And I think that if anyone is listening, those types of initiatives, that kind of coming together, having a place where people can belong and bond, is just so crucial into continuing instilling confidence and supporting people.
it is, and I think those connections that were made there, I'm still meeting with people from that group, and they still, some of them still in touch with each other. It was never about us talking that, we feel bad about female being insecurity. It was always about our success. Like, what was the most exciting project you've done? Tell us about it. What was the most kind of exciting things you learned in your PhD about?
Maybe we need to get our heads together on how we can have you pick that back up again, because that sounds like an awesome thing to be able to be a part of and get involved with. So who knows? Watch this space. Absolutely. Well, I guess as we come towards the end of this particular episode, kind of final question then is, based on all of your experiences, are there any overarching words of advice or encouragement that you would offer to any aspiring female entrepreneurs that are looking to make their mark in the cybersecurity space?
Don't be shy. Reach out to to your future manager, to that conference that you are eager to be part of. The worst case scenario, they would remember that you asked. Follow your passions, because I believe people are most successful in the places where they are really passionate about. So I don't think we need to work all the time on our weaknesses. I think we need to just, follow that feeling, that chemistry that sometimes happens when you are excited about or curious about something.
So don't be shy. Always kind of ask and reach out and be persistent in that. And really do something that you're driven by. Because if we spend so much time just focused on the areas of development, you forget the stuff that is your superpower that drives you forward. Great advice, and thank you for sharing your story. And it's really great to be able to connect with you, especially after the success that you guys have just had. So I'm very excited to hear about how you guys continue to grow and see more of your name come up in lights. No doubt it will, but really appreciate you taking the time to impart some advice for anyone who's listening.
Thank you, Elle. Thank you for doing that and for inspiring all of us.
Of course. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode, and big thank you again to Marina for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.